I am a completely self-taught photographer, which means that I made a lot of mistakes when I was learning photography. And in this video, I'm going to admit them all so that maybe you don't make the same ones as me. My name is Hannah and I'm an ocean lifestyle photographer based in Queensland, Australia. I make videos sharing photography tips and helping you to become more confident and creative with your camera. If this sounds like the sort of thing you're into, hit subscribe. Right, we're going to start with my settings because this is probably the most confusing part of learning photography. So the first mistake I made a lot was diligently following online cheat sheets about what shutter speed to use. So if we take a quick look at one of these, they all pretty much look the same, and they say that for a person walking, use a shutter speed of 1/125th of a second. A person running, use 1/500th of a second, and they get faster as the motion increases. But what they don't take into account is how steady you actually hold your camera, especially as a beginner, when you're actually taking a photo. Now, I learnt using a DSLR, which means that I at least had some stability from holding the camera close to my face using the viewfinder, whereas nowadays a lot of people are using mirrorless cameras like these, and we're holding them far away from our body when we're taking the picture. So for me, oftentimes I was shooting a stationary subject, but didn't take into consideration that my hands, and therefore my camera, were actually moving a little bit when I was taking a photo. So lots of my photos were coming out slightly blurry, and I couldn't figure out why, because as far as I was concerned, I was using the correct shutter speed. If this is happening to you, what I would recommend is to use a slightly faster shutter speed than you think you need until you get more practice holding your camera steady when you're taking a photo. So if the cheat sheet says use 1/125th of a second, maybe use 1/160th of a second. The second mistake I made with my settings was with my aperture. I had learnt that you use a narrower aperture when you want to get more of your photo in focus. And boy, did I do that. I would go and shoot a landscape, for example, which in my mind, I wanted to get the whole of the frame in focus as much as possible. So what did I do? Well, of course, I changed my aperture to f/22, thinking that I was doing the right thing. And then I would end up with really dark and noisy photos. Now, the concept is correct. The narrower the aperture you use, the greater the depth of field. But what I didn't know was that every lens actually has a sweet spot, an optimum aperture where the lens is sharpest. And it's usually somewhere around f8, but you can look it up for your particular lens. If that doesn't give you the depth of field you're after, then step down one stop to f11 and see how that looks. Don't just go straight to the narrowest aperture that your lens can go to, because by doing this, we're letting in much less light and we're going to end up with very dark and noisy photos. Right, while we're here, let's talk about ISO, because as you can probably guess, everything that I read online about photography told me to use ISO 100 at all times. Otherwise, there will be excessive noise in your image that it's impossible to remove, and it will be ruined forever. Now, this isn't true, and especially nowadays, the noise reduction software just in Lightroom is really incredible. It is far more important to take a properly exposed photo in camera than it is to keep your ISO low. So if you need to increase your ISO to brighten your image, please do so. Don't be scared of ISO. Another mistake I made when I started shooting people was being too focused on the person's face. I really wanted them to look good in the photo, so much so that I neglected to look around the rest of the frame, or even sometimes the rest of their body. I'd spend 10 minutes shooting them only to discover that their tag was sticking out on their shirt, or that they still had a hairband tied around their wrist. I'd cut off their feet completely without realising, and I rarely took much notice of the background. And I wouldn't realise until I looked at the photos on my computer that they had a massive tree branch sticking out of their head the whole time. This just takes practice. There is a lot to think about as a photographer. You're trying to get the right light, the right settings, get the person to look good, and you're trying to do it all at the same time. It's a lot. but there's no need to rush. When we lift up the camera, people think that we are ready to go. So take some time to look around and get things right before you even lift your camera. And then after you've taken a few shots, take a moment to actually have a look through them when you're there and it's easy for you to change things. I never used to do this, and I'd get back to my computer and be absolutely kicking myself for not noticing something that I could have easily changed at the time. The last mistake I'm going to talk about is something that is not spoken about enough. I don't know if it's because it's kind of boring, but I feel like photographers kind of gatekeep this for some reason. But the mistake I made as a beginner, that is my biggest regret, is not properly organising my photo files from day one. I remember when I was a beginner, I had my computer and I had my camera, and I was so excited to see my photos. I'd simply take my SD card and I'd copy the files onto my laptop. Then I would load them into Lightroom and start practicing my editing. But I had no organisation whatsoever. So I'd create a folder on my computer called something really generic like beach photos. Then that folder would get moved around on my computer, and then Lightroom wouldn't be able to find them, and my Lightroom was just a mess. And the reason I regret this is because I ended up accidentally deleting photos without realising, because they weren't organised. So what I would highly recommend is to get yourself an external hard drive dedicated to photography. If you're not sure how you want to label the folders, you can copy exactly what I do. I have a folder for each year, then I'll have a folder for each month, starting with the number of the month so that they are in chronological order. Then I create a folder for each shoot, starting with the date backwards so that it's also in chronological order. Then a description of some kind. Edit your files directly from your hard drive, not from your computer. That way your computer won't get clogged up with files, and they'll always be safe and easy to find. If you'd like to learn a bit more about my organisation and photo selection process, check out this video where I explain my whole process. I know this can feel quite boring and tedious, and when you're just starting out, it can feel really unnecessary. But trust me, your future photographer self will be very grateful for your effort. If you are making any of these mistakes, don't worry, we've all been there. And I hope these tips help you to push past them and to help you feel more confident. If you have any questions at all, let me know in the comments. And most importantly, stay safe and have fun.